It was a stormy night when young Ethan boarded the midnight train from Hollow Brook to Ravenswood. Little did he know, this journey would become the most terrifying experience of his life. Ethan, a boy of 14, had always loved trains. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the tracks, the gentle sway of the carriages. These were the comforts of his childhood. But tonight, the atmosphere was different. The platform was deserted. The wind howled through the station, and the train itself seemed ancient, as if it had emerged from a bygone era. As he stepped into the carriage, Ethan noticed the dim, flickering lights and the worn, velvet seats. There were only a few other passengers, all of whom seemed lost in their own worlds. He found an empty compartment and settled in, clutching his backpack tightly. As the train lurched forward, the rain began to pelt the windows, creating a cacophony of sound. Ethan stared out at the darkness, feeling a growing sense of unease. Suddenly, the compartment door slid open, and a tall, gaunt man entered. His eyes were hollow, his skin pallid, and his clothes seemed outdated by decades. "Mind if I join you?" the stranger asked, his voice raspy. Ethan nodded, though he felt a chill run down his spine. The man sat across from him, staring intently. Minutes passed in uncomfortable silence. "Do you believe in ghosts?" the man finally asked. Ethan, taken aback, shook his head. "No, not really." The stranger leaned closer. "You might change your mind before this journey is over." The train plunged into a tunnel, and the lights flickered out completely. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness and the sound of the rain. When the lights returned, the stranger was gone. Ethan's heart raced as he looked around, seeing only empty seats. As the train emerged from the tunnel, Ethan noticed something odd. The other passengers, who had been silent and still, were now watching him, their eyes empty and expressionless. Panic set in as he realized they weren't normal passengers at all. He bolted from his seat and ran down the corridor, desperate to find the conductor. But as he moved from carriage to carriage, the faces of the passengers became more grotesque, their features distorted and ghastly. Finally, Ethan found the conductor's cabin. The conductor, an elderly man with kind eyes, looked at him with concern. "What's the matter, son?" he asked. "The passengers, they're not real. They're ghosts," Ethan stammered. The conductor sighed, his expression turning somber. "I was hoping you'd make it through without noticing. This train, it's cursed. It carries the souls of those who died tragically in train accidents. Once you see them, there's no going back." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "You must ride the train until dawn. If you survive, you'll be free to leave. But if you succumb to the fear, you'll join them." Determined to survive, Ethan returned to his compartment. The whispers started then, soft at first, then louder, more insistent. The ghostly passengers began to move, creeping closer to his compartment, their hollow eyes filled with malice. Ethan closed his eyes, trying to block out the voices, but they echoed in his mind. "Join us, join us." Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Ethan's fear grew, but he clung to the conductor's words. He had to make it until dawn. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, the train entered another tunnel. The darkness was absolute, and the whispers reached a fever pitch. Ethan felt icy fingers brush his skin, and the compartment filled with a bone-chilling cold. He screamed, a primal sound that echoed through the train. The ghostly figures loomed over him, their faces twisted in a final, terrifying grin. Just as he felt he could bear no more, the train burst out of the tunnel, bathed in the golden light of dawn. The ghostly passengers vanished, and the train began to slow. When it finally came to a stop, Ethan stumbled out onto the platform at Ravenswood. The conductor was there, watching him with a mixture of relief and sadness. "You made it," the conductor said softly. "Few do." Ethan, trembling and exhausted, nodded. "What happens now?" The conductor smiled faintly. "You go on with your life. But remember, the Phantom Express is always out there, carrying its spectral passengers. And those who board it might never leave. Ethan never spoke of that night again, but the memory haunted him. He never took another train, and every time he heard a distant whistle, a shiver ran down his spine. For he knew the truth. Some journeys are best avoided, and some trains should never be boarded. The Phantom Express remains a legend, a ghost train that travels through the night, carrying the souls of the lost. If you ever find yourself alone on a stormy night, waiting for a train, be wary, for the next train that arrives might just be the one that never stops.